I don't know about you guys, but by the end of December, I'm usually suffering from just a little bit of food fatigue, and I really just want some easy meals I can make that don't require a lot of thought or planning or time. So I thought it might be helpful coming into this time of year after the holiday to put together a video of meal ideas that are super easy and that come together in about 20 minutes, give or take. So I have some recipes I've made over the past month that I'm gonna share with you. Plus, I went back into the See Mindy Mom vault and I got some meals that I have made in the past several years that should fit into this category. So hopefully there is something new here for you to try. I'll give you some ideas for just easy things we can make as we are recovering from the holiday cooking frenzy. We're having some smoked sausage orzo tonight, and this is it. This is it. This is all the ingredients. I've got some beef smoked sausage. You could use a different kind. I think the original recipe is chicken. I'm gonna need 3 cups of broth, so I'm just gonna make it from bouillon. Need about ½ cup of grated Parmesan cheese, 1½ cups of orzo. I have some broccoli florets here. Mine are frozen. I'm sure fresh would be fine, about a crown maybe chopped up. Got an onion. I'm gonna chop up about half of that, and my garlic is already minced. I have my sausage sliced up. I've got my stove here on about medium. While that is browning just a little bit, I'm gonna chop up this onion. Boom, done. I feel like this onion is gonna need a little help getting sizzly, so I'm just gonna throw in about a tablespoon of butter to help that along. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. I can smell you cooking now. Garlic, a hefty amount. I like hardly ever measure this. This is probably over a tablespoon. Stir that around a little bit. I'm gonna toss my broccoli in since it's still frozen so it can start heating up a little bit. 1½ cups of orzo, little tiny pasta. 3 cups of chicken broth, or in my case, 3 teaspoons of bouillon and 3 cups of water. Salt and pepper to taste. Once this comes to a simmer, I am going to reduce the heat to low to medium low, cover it. I'm gonna let it cook for probably about 10 to 12 minutes and then just remove it from the heat, turn the stove off, and let it sit for probably 5 more minutes or so until the pasta is done cooking. I simmered it for 10 minutes. I let it sit for 5. This is what it looks like now. I'm gonna stir in about 1/3 to ½ cup of this shaky can grated Parmesan cheese. And I believe we're gonna be in business. We're getting really fast and loose with the measurements tonight. I feel like the cap is like a 1/4 cup. So I put about 2 of them in here. Stir, stir, stir. Maybe pop the lid back on for another minute or so, just to let the cheese kind of melt in there a little bit. Then it will be ready to plate up and eat. I'm looking forward to this. This is so easy. In like probably less than 25 minutes. I am making a really quick roasted red pepper chicken tortellini. So I have some tortellini right here. This is 18 ounces. This is fresh tortellini, not frozen. And I'm gonna use some already diced up chicken breast. This is a shortcut that is gonna make this recipe go much faster. I have a jar of roasted red bell peppers. I'm only gonna use about half this jar, maybe even a little less. I'm gonna need a cup of chicken broth, which I'll make with water and bouillon, some garlic, salt and pepper to taste, a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 3 tablespoons of butter, and then I'm gonna use about a cup of heavy cream and about a cup of grated Parmesan cheese at the end. I seasoned my chicken pieces with a little salt and pepper, and now I have them in my pan over medium heat. And I'm gonna brown them on both sides. I have my 3 tablespoons of butter in there with them. After a couple of minutes on one side, I'll flip them over and let them cook a couple more minutes. If they aren't cooked all the way through after that, it's okay, because I'm gonna add some more things and let the chicken keep cooking with the sauce. I also have a pot of water on the stove next to me, and as soon as this comes to a boil, I'm going to add my tortellini and let them cook for just about 4 minutes or so until they're tender. It doesn't take long for the tortellini to cook. That's one of the reasons why I like using it in these types of recipes. My chicken has been cooking for about 5 minutes total, so I'm gonna add a little garlic in here, or a lot. I'm gonna add some Italian seasoning, about a teaspoon, a little salt, pepper, and you don't have to do this, but I'm gonna add about a 1/4 cup of white wine. I wouldn't even bother if I didn't already have this bottle open. And I'm gonna let that simmer for just a couple minutes while I drain the tortellini, because it's almost done. And also get some new tongs. Okay, now I'm gonna add my roasted red peppers. I probably should chop these up first, but I don't really have time. So probably about 3/4 of a cup or so in here, about a little less than half this jar. And these are not in oil, these are just in water. Some bouillon, about a cup of water. Actually, I'm just gonna do about half a cup since I put that wine in there. Give that all a little stir. I want to bring this up to a simmer and just let it simmer for about 5 minutes or so to finish cooking the chicken. You can use a meat thermometer to check and see if your chicken is done or to monitor when it is finished cooking. I can't find mine right now, so I just did the old take a piece out and slice it open and see if it's still pink inside. I'm pretty confident that my chicken is done, so I'm going to turn my heat down just a little bit, and I'm adding some Parmesan cheese. If I'm being honest, I hardly ever measure grated Parmesan cheese, but this is probably about a cup. And probably about 3/4 of a cup to a cup of heavy cream, or half and half. Give this a stir. I want that cheese to get nice and melty, and then I will add our tortellini back in, and I'm gonna pop the lid on for about 2 minutes at that point and just let everything kind of steam together, finish cooking that tortellini and help thicken up the sauce a little bit. If you do not have any skillet meals with ground beef and pasta, like hamburger helper dupe recipes in your arsenal, then I highly recommend finding some that work for you. Those have come in clutch for my family on nights when I'm not sure what to make and I have a limited amount of time, because there's lots of different ways that you can make them, and I pretty much almost always have the ingredients on hand. Tonight I am going to do just a very basic garlic Parmesan ground beef version, so I'll show you how I'm doing that. I just plopped my ground beef in the pan, and it is 4:53 when I am starting this recipe right now. We're gonna work on getting this ground beef cooked up real quick. And while that's cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and put my 2.5 cups of water that I'm gonna be adding to this recipe here in a little bit into my kettle and get that heating up, so when I add it to my pan later on, it's not like cold from the tap. You don't have to do this, but it saves me a little time when I do. I don't need it to boil, I just want it to be warm. My beef is almost done cooking, and I added 2 heaping spoonfuls of garlic. I don't care what people say, I think this gets a bad rap. I think it works just fine for my family dinners. I'm gonna let that get fragrant with the oil that the meat has rendered while it finishes cooking. It just takes about a minute or so. Okay, we're done here, just about, and I'm going to use a packet seasoning. This is a shortcut. This is a zesty Italian dressing seasoning, and it's gonna have some of the things that I would normally put in my skillet dishes anyway, mainly salt. I mean, let's face it, that's really the secret for flavorful food if you ask me. And I'm gonna add just a little bit of red pepper flake, like maybe half a teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon. Totally optional. 2.5 cups of beef broth, or in my case, I'm just gonna use a couple teaspoons of this beef bouillon broth base, and then 2.5 cups of water. 8 ounces of pasta. I'm gonna use these bow ties. There's about half this bag left, which would be about 8 ounces, since this is a 16-ounce bag. If you want to use more, I would add an additional 1 cup or 8 ounces of water for each 4 ounces of pasta that you add to the recipe. That's just what I would do. And since I added the water hot, it's already come to a simmer. So I'm gonna pop the lid on and reduce the heat to low so it doesn't boil over. I just wanna make sure that it's still simmering while it's covered. I'm gonna let that simmer for about 12 minutes until the pasta is al dente. It is now 5:01, and while this is simmering, I'm going to shred up my Parmesan cheese. My pasta is almost done. I'm gonna add my grated Parmesan. I probably only had about 3/4 of a cup. And then about half a cup of heavy whipping cream. Standard hamburger helper calls for like half water and half milk during the cooking process. I find that to be a little bit persnickety. I think it's easier to scorch and burn everything. I prefer just to use a little bit of half and half or heavy cream at the end of the recipe, because it adds that richness and helps make the dish creamy without having to go through the whole cooking process with everything. I'm gonna put the lid back on this. I'm gonna turn the stove off. So I'm just gonna let it sit on the hot stove for a couple of minutes to let the pasta finish cooking. And now it is 5:16. So not quite a 20-minute meal, but pretty close. Might actually be 20 minutes if you're not, you know, filming it and giving explanations and where about and what to for. It's so simple and it doesn't look like much, but it is really flavorful and tasty. And you could add other things to this. If you want to throw in some steamed broccoli, if you want to throw in a can of tomatoes, if you want to throw in like some roasted red bell peppers. I mean, there's lots of things you could add to this. It's really good on its own. I know you want some of this, but you can't have it. It's not for you. What I have here is half a pound of ground Italian pork sausage, mild Italian sausage. So I thought we would whip up a really easy 1-pan sausage tortellini recipe using the ingredients that I have here. I have, of course, my bag of frozen tortellini, my 19-ounce bag, half an onion, which I'll chop. I'm gonna use some minced garlic, 1 can of tomatoes. The sausage is already seasoned, so I'm gonna go pretty light on the seasonings and just use a pinch of crushed red pepper and some Italian seasoning, and then salt and pepper to taste. I'm gonna add some half and half, probably about 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of water here. I'm gonna finish it off with some cheese. You could really use just about any cheese that you like in this dish, but I'm gonna go ahead and use this Gouda cheese, and it's, you know, a slightly different flavor than other cheeses, so that's what we're gonna use tonight with this. Let me show you how I'm making that. I have my 1/2 pound of ground sausage and my onions and my minced garlic in here browning all together. I typically don't add any oil to this because the sausage renders some fat for the onions and garlic to saute in, but if you're using a leaner sausage, you could go ahead and add a little bit of olive oil or even a tablespoon of butter or something like that into this if you need something for your onions and garlic to saute in. My sausage is finished browning now, so I'm gonna go ahead and add my tortellini, my can of tomatoes, a sprinkling of Italian seasoning, probably about 1/2 teaspoon or so. You could add more if you want more, or less if you want less. Just a pinch of crushed red pepper flake. Don't want to overdo it, don't want it to be too spicy. You could leave that out if you don't like spicy. And then salt and pepper to taste. Gonna add about 1 cup of water and about 1/2 cup of half and half, and give that a stir and see where we stand with the liquids. It's probably good. It doesn't take very much liquid for these tortellini to cook, but the good news is that if you overdo it on the liquids, it just turns into tortellini soup, which is also delicious. So we're gonna go with that for now. I'm gonna bring that up to a simmer. I'm gonna cover it and I'm gonna let it cook for about 6 or 7 minutes. It doesn't take very long for the tortellini to cook through, and then we'll be ready to finish it out with the cheese. You could also toss in some frozen veggies, like some frozen peas and carrots, or at the very end before you serve it, you could stir in a few handfuls of fresh spinach if you wanted to. I'm just going to keep it as is. I'm not gonna add any more vegetables besides the tomatoes, and instead I'm just going to make some vegetables to go on the side with this dish. My tortellini is done, and I did use just a tad too much liquid in this. I'd probably cut back the water on it if you were making it, or if I was making it again. But what I'm gonna do is add the cheese. I'm gonna stir in the cheese here, and then I'm just gonna pop the lid back on and let it sit for a few minutes and see if that helps it thicken up just a little bit before I plate it up. Here are the ingredients for tonight's recipe. I have 1 package of egg noodles, and then the chicken pot pie part is made up of 1/2 of a yellow onion and 3 cloves of garlic, which I have already diced and minced respectively. 1 cup of half and half, 1 cup of chicken broth, but I'm just going to use 1 cup of water and about 2 teaspoons of my chicken broth base, salt and pepper to taste, 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of flour. Here is my chicken. I'm gonna make sure that I drain all the liquid out of that as well. And then I have 1 package of steam in the bag mixed veggies. I'm actually gonna throw these in the microwave for just a couple of minutes so that they aren't completely frozen. If I had thought of it sooner, I could have just gotten them out and left them on the counter for about 30 minutes. I just don't want them to be frozen so that it throws off the temperature of my pan whenever I'm cooking everything. So I melted my butter in my skillet, and I gave my onions and garlic a head start sauteing in that. Now I'm going to add my vegetables, and I did as I said. I put them in the microwave for just about 2 minutes so they are not going to be ice cold. I don't want them to draw down the temperature of my pan too much. And I'm also going to sprinkle in my flour right now. I have my silicone whisk here. I'm just going to kind of mix that around, let the butter soak up the flour, let everything saute for a minute. I'm also going to season this with some salt and pepper here, a little bit of my chicken broth base there, 1 cup of water. Give that a little stir, and my half and half. Yummy. Now I'm gonna turn up the heat just a little bit to medium, but I'm gonna stay right here with it and use my whisk to kind of stir it around a little bit. I wanna bring this up to a low boil and just let it simmer for a few minutes until it starts to thicken. Now that this is starting to simmer, you'll be surprised how quickly it will thicken. And also, since the half and half is in there, how quickly it will scald. So you want to be careful not to be too far from it during this part of the process. I have not forgotten about my chicken. I'm going to go ahead and just stir that in now. This smells so amazing right now. So at this point, if your skillet or your pot is big enough, you could just pour the noodles back in and just stir it all together. Or you could just, you know, take your smaller skillet and pour it over the top of your noodles in another dish. I think what I'm going to do is just spoon this right over the top of my noodles like so. I'm sort of flying by the seat of my pants with tonight's dinner because I'm just kind of throwing some stuff into a skillet and hoping that it turns into a French onion beef and rice skillet meal. So let me show you the ingredients for that. I'm going to be using ground beef for this meal, so I have a pound right here. I have 1 can of condensed French onion soup and 1 can of beef consommé. 2 cups of rice is what I'm going to use. I have 1 little 8-ounce container of French onion dip. I think you could sub just plain sour cream if you don't want to use the French onion dip. And I also have a bag of French fried onions and 1 package. This is a 7-ounce package of Gruyere, and this was the most affordable one. It was actually under $5 for this particular brand. If you wanted to sub for something a little more cost efficient, a Swiss would probably do, or maybe even like a Havarti or a Gouda. I just finished browning up my pound of ground beef, and now I'm going to stir in 2 cups of white rice. I want to let this brown with the ground beef for just about a minute or so. I like to let the rice kind of soak up any of the fat that the beef rendered. 1 can of beef consommé. As a reminder, this is not the same as beef broth. Similar, but not quite the same. 1 can of condensed French onion soup, plus 2 cans of water, which would be the equivalent of about 2.5 cups. I am not going to season this very much yet because the soups are salty. You can salt and pepper it to taste, but the soups have salt. The Gruyere that we're gonna add later is pretty flavorful and salty, so I'm not gonna add too much extra seasoning, maybe just a little bit of pepper. I'm gonna bring this to a simmer. I'm gonna cover it and reduce the heat to low. And I usually set my timer for 10 minutes with white rice, and then I turn the heat completely off. But I keep the lid on for an extra 10 minutes just to let the rice finish steaming, as opposed to boiling it the entire time and then having it kind of burn to the bottom. So my skillet is done. The rice cooked perfectly using that method. So now I am going to stir in 1 8-ounce container. So this is a cup of French onion dip. And like I said before, I think you could just sub, you know, regular sour cream if you wanted. Maybe you could stir in a little bit of like Lipton onion soup mix or something if you really wanted that oniony flavor. And then I'm gonna top it with the Gruyere. I shredded up that entire block of Gruyere. I'm gonna just put that right on top. I'm gonna pop the lid back on for about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. And the heat from the skillet and the meal itself is gonna melt that cheese. And then right before I serve it, I'm gonna top it with some French fried onions, and then it'll be ready to go. We're probably just gonna have this with a side salad. I have some crescent rolls baking up in the oven to go along with it. Super easy meal, did not take long to put together. Very little effort. I'm looking forward to trying this. Did you know that you can use gnocchi in your sheet pan meals? I always try to pronounce that very carefully. Sheet pan meal. That's where you just throw everything onto a cookie sheet. I use foil and line my cookie sheet, throw stuff on there, pop it into the oven, and then we have a really easy meal. It's also a great way for me to use up stuff I have hanging around in my kitchen, like vegetables or different kinds of proteins. So I thought I'd take a look around and see what I have that I could throw together for a sheet pan meal. I found a few red bell peppers already sliced up that I'd like to use, and about a pound of asparagus. I will wash that and chop that up. And I think I'll also throw some baby carrots in there as well for vegetables. I have a package of gnocchi here, and I think what I will do once I prep the vegetables is I will add the gnocchi and the vegetables to a bowl, and I will toss it with some of this pesto. And that's what I will use to kind of season and oil it before I put it onto the sheet pan. I also found these Italian sausage links in my freezer, so I thought that I would just go ahead and cook those alongside the veggies and the gnocchi in the oven so it can all cook together, and then I can slice those up to serve alongside the gnocchi and the veggies. If I wasn't being so lazy today, I would probably sear these sausages in a pan for a minute or 2 on each side before I put them on here, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna pop this into the oven. I did use just a smidge, like just a skosh of olive oil with this as well. Pesto already has oil in it That's one of the main ingredients of pesto, so I didn't want to put too much oil in there. And I'm not going to season it very much, but I just want to sprinkle just a little bit of this anti-no-no seasoning. Again, the pesto is seasoning itself. We will pop this into a 400-degree oven until it is done. I'm not sure how long that's going to take. I'll probably use my meat thermometer on the sausages to see. And by the time those are done, this will be done too. This only took about 20 minutes in my oven at 400 degrees. The carrots could have maybe used just a couple more minutes, but that's okay. It'll work just fine. And I'm just going to finish this off by sprinkling a little bit of freshly grated Parmesan cheese on top. That's it. So easy. If I'm being honest, I probably only recently discovered gnocchi, or started using it, I should say, in the last 4 or 5 years. It's just not something that I grew up eating. And I think maybe I thought that it was something really exotic, but when I tried my first recipes with it, I was like, wow, this cooks really quickly. It's a very inexpensive ingredient. In fact, I can usually find it in 1-pound packages for less than $2 at various and sundry stores. And it's something that tends to take on the flavors of what you are cooking it with. So I can use it in a variety of ways, and it is a great way to stretch a meal to feed a lot of people. Tonight I am making a recipe that I have had pinned for a little while. It is from the website Salt and Lavender, and it is called chicken bacon gnocchi. I will leave that recipe linked in the description box below. Per the usual, I will probably be making a few adjustments according to how I like my food seasoned, and also according to the ingredients that I have on hand. But I find that I keep coming back to that particular website, you know, fairly often. I think those pins are suggested to me a lot on Pinterest, and I like a lot of her recipes. So be sure to go and have a look around that website when you get a chance. I used my kitchen shears to cut up 6 pieces of bacon, and I already have that cooking on the stove. You can probably hear that kind of simmering on the stove behind me. So I've got that going. And the rest of the ingredients I have right here. This is a pound of chicken breast, and I went ahead and cut that up into bite-sized pieces. I'm going to use a generous amount of garlic. I'll probably use about 2 heaping spoonfuls of garlic for this recipe. It calls for a cup of heavy cream, but I'm not sure I have quite a cup in here, so I have some half and half that I can finish that up with if I need to. Half a cup of chicken broth, but I'm just going to use half a cup of water and about a teaspoon of this better than bouillon. Oh, this is actually oregano, and I need Italian seasoning. Hold please. Of course, I have my gnocchi here. This is just a standard size package. It's about a pound, a little over a pound, 17 ounces. Italian seasoning. Her recipe says a dash. I'll probably put in about a teaspoon. Salt and pepper to taste. I'm actually going to use a little bit of this Auntie No-No's Everything seasoning, and then we finish it off with some freshly grated Parmesan cheese. I'll probably use about 3/4 of a cup, which would be most of this block. When my bacon was done, I removed it from the pan and just put it onto a paper towel on top of a plate so that it could cool down. And I did drain most of the bacon grease, but not all of it, because now I am browning the chicken pieces in the bacon grease, which was just probably a couple of tablespoons worth that I left in the bottom of the pan after I removed the bacon. I'm also gonna go ahead and season this now. I'm gonna season the chicken with some Auntie No-No's Everything seasoning and a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. And I'll sprinkle in a little bit of the Italian seasoning as well, let that get fragrant in the heat. I don't need my chicken to cook completely. I'm just kind of looking for the outside of each piece to not be pink anymore. It's gonna finish cooking with the sauce. This just needs about 1 more minute to brown all the chicken, so I'm gonna go ahead and add the garlic as well. I didn't wanna add that at the beginning because garlic can burn really easily. You don't want it to saute for very long. It only needs about 60 to 90 seconds or so. I'm gonna add my bouillon. This is just about a teaspoon or so of better than bouillon. Half a cup of water. Now I'm going to add my gnocchi, and I'm also going to add in my cream and stir that up really well. I'm gonna bring that to a simmer and cover it and let it cook for about 4 minutes, but I'm gonna make sure that it's simmering very low so that the cream doesn't scorch. So I set my timer, I let it simmer very low, so yay, it did not burn. And I used a meat thermometer to make sure that my chicken is done. It is cooked to a safe internal temperature. So now I'm just going to add my bacon back in and also stir in my Parmesan cheese, and I'm gonna keep this on low heat for just about 2 minutes to let everything heat through, and then it will be ready to serve. Today I'm going to be making a beef enchilada gnocchi bake, and I'm actually combining what I like about several different recipes I've tried before using various and sundry ingredients into this one recipe, and I'm making it ahead of time so that I can then just pop it in the oven and reheat it for dinner later on. I am going to start by chopping up about half of this onion. Okay, my eyes are totally watering and my nose is totally running from chopping up that onion. Woo! It was definitely an eye-watering onion. And I'm going to saute that while the ground beef is browning, along with the ground beef and also a little bit of minced garlic. I have a pound of ground beef right here. I'm using 85/15. I also have a can of refried beans and a can of tomatoes. These are just the petite diced tomatoes that have a little seasoning in them. 8 ounces of enchilada sauce. This is the Frontera brand, but you could use a can of enchilada sauce if you want to. I'm using the red chili enchilada sauce. Of course, I have my gnocchi. I have one standard package, which is a little over 17 ounces. I am going to season this using a teaspoon of cumin, a teaspoon of oregano, and probably about 3 teaspoons of chili powder, plus salt and pepper to taste. If you wanted to, you could just use about a tablespoon or so of taco seasoning. And I'm gonna, of course, top this with a little bit of cheese. And not pictured, because I haven't gotten them out of the pantry yet, are tortilla chips. I think I'm going to use that in this recipe as well, and you'll see how in just a minute. My ground beef is finished browning along with my onions and my garlic. My onions are getting translucent as well. So now I'm going to add my seasonings. 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of oregano, and about 3 teaspoons or a tablespoon or so of chili powder. I'm also going to stir in my enchilada sauce, my refried beans, and my tomatoes. I want to stir to combine that, and then I'm going to let it simmer over low heat for about 10 minutes. My sauce has been simmering for about 10 minutes or so. So everything's kind of mingled together. I've kept it on very low heat because beans and tomatoes are 2 things that will simmer and splatter everywhere and burn to the bottom of the pan if you are not careful. Oh my goodness, this smells so good. So I'm going to stir in my gnocchi. Gnocchi does not need a ton of moisture to cook. It doesn't need a whole bunch of liquid like pasta or rice. So I think that we're probably pretty well set here. I'll stir in my gnocchi and I'm going to put my cover back on and let the gnocchi cook with the sauce for about 4 or 5 minutes. Doesn't take very long. And then I'm going to transfer this to a casserole dish to finish up. This stainless steel rondo from Misen is oven safe. So if I was going to eat this at home with just my family, I could just go ahead and finish it out in this pan and then pop this pan into the oven. But because I'm going to be taking this somewhere to share with another family, I'm going to finish it out by transferring it to a casserole dish that will be a little easier for me to take somewhere else. Sometimes these suckers are a little hard to separate. I should have done it before I put them in the pan, but that's okay. They separate really easily once they start to cook. I am going to finish this off by topping it with some shredded Colby Jack. This turned out a little bit saucier than I thought it might, so you probably could stretch this and actually add another package of gnocchi. But the other thing that I'm gonna do is add some crushed up tortilla chips on top. And then when I am ready to reheat it for dinner tonight, I will pop it in the oven at 325. I'm gonna keep the heat pretty low and just let it heat through probably about 20 to 25 minutes until it's bubbling. And then it will be ready to serve. So I'm looking forward to this. Yummy. Threw a bag of frozen green beans into the microwave, so the microwave is going next to me, and we're going to be having some tortellini tonight, and this is from the refrigerated section at Aldi. They had several different kinds to choose from. I just got the standard 3 cheese tortellini, and this is a 20-ounce package. So I have some water coming to a boil on the stove, and I have learned to cook pasta in a shallower pan. The water comes up to temperature a little bit quicker. It's also easy to cook like longer noodles in that shallow pan, so we'll get those going as soon as the water is boiling. Right now I'm going to open up this package of chicken sausages. These are the mild sweet Italian chicken sausages from Aldi. They are fully cooked. We had these last weekend and really liked them, so I picked them up again today. And once I have these sliced up, I'm just going to toss them in a skillet to heat them up, and when the green beans are done, I'm going to toss those in the skillet with the sausages. Probably season them with a little bit of butter and salt and pepper. The sausages are pretty heavily seasoned, so it's not going to need a lot of seasoning. And where the pasta is concerned, I'm going to use one of my favorite tricks. Instead of making up a sauce, we're going to use a dip. This is from the refrigerated section at Aldi. They had several different dips to choose from, but we recently tried this one and liked it. It's the Parmesan, Asiago, and garlic dip. Because I'm using fresh pasta, fresh tortellinis. They do not take long at all to cook, really, only like 4, maybe 5 minutes once the water is boiling. So after those are done cooking, I'll drain them and then I will just toss them with the dip and it'll make a really delicious sauce. And I'm probably just gonna put those in a bowl and then top them with some of the sausages and green beans. And that will be dinner tonight, like super easy, 4 ingredients. We're gonna throw it together here in about 10 or 12 minutes and it's going to be yummy. Tonight I am making 2 ingredient sandwiches. That's where I take some already cooked rotisserie chicken or some other shredded kind of fully cooked meat and I mix it with a container of prepared dip and I put it into sandwiches or tortillas and call it a day. I'm gonna pull out the ciabatta rolls that I got on clearance at Aldi last time and we're just gonna have some fruit and some chips and it's gonna be a really easy Friday night meal instead of going through the drive-thru because man, that has gotten expensive. So I ran into Walmart on my way to pick kids up from school and I went to the deli counter and I had them shave a pound of roast beef for me at the deli counter. I picked up some buns. I even went for the premium buns that are like around $3 or so. They actually sell Arby's sauce in the store now in like a jar where the barbecue sauces and things are. So I picked up some of that and a bag of chips. I've got some fruit here at home. So I'm just gonna heat up the roast beef. I think, that's optional too. I might toast the buns, pile the roast beef onto the bun, put a little bit of that Arby's sauce on it, have some chips, have some fruit, and that will be dinner tonight. And for the same price that I was gonna pay for just 4 sandwiches, I can make at least 5 meals, complete meals, with the ingredients that I ran into Walmart and picked up. And it didn't take me any more time than it would have to go through the drive-thru and get those sandwiches. I wanted to make breakfast for everybody, but I really did not want to stand over a griddle making pancakes and bacon and eggs, and I didn't want to fire up my oven to make like cinnamon rolls or something. So I decided that I'm going to make breakfast tacos and I'm going to use those breakfast bowls as a jumping off point. I'm gonna heat them up and then I'm gonna add just a couple of fresh eggs scrambled in and we're gonna put them in tortillas with salsa, with cheese. I'm gonna pop those hash brown sticks into the air fryer and we're just gonna have like a really easy / lazy Saturday morning brunch because I'm not getting up and around early enough to actually call it breakfast.